I've been doing some thinking and I've decided that for the returning viewers, if you're listening to this on my channel, I'll be documenting and speaking about my own personal views on life and how it is I came to be at this current state doing what I'm doing and what is the end goal of all of this and the way of documenting it for either current or future seekers of truth who are also going through their own personal awakening, personal realization of truth, and dispersing of the illusion that has been going on for a very long time as a way to assist in a more rational, straightforward, non emotional, string pulling type of way as I would have liked to, and I believe I might have been helped here and there along the way. So, the main picture here is stating that for my earlier years, I wanted to figure out what life was about. I wanted to find out why I was here, and so what my actions, my desires would have some meaning. I don't understand why everyone is mainly and centrally a philosopher, or why everyone isn't mainly and centrally a philosopher, because if you aren't trying to figure out that for yourself, you're borrowing or begging or passively taking on someone else's philosophy, and this may lead to situations that are unsatisfactory. Now, majority of the human population, unfortunately, in this day and age, they do not have a proper guidance, especially if you live in the modern Western era, Europe, or what you would call major cities. So, people that are seeking, people that are always wondering what's going on, the cards are stacked against them, if you will, and they would be usually guided down towards the critical thinking or conspiracy theory aspect of things. I personally believe this might be a distraction or it might be just a teaser test to get people a little worked up, get people a little caught on to what it is that their true intentions and their true truth seeking muscle is really after. So, in my personal case, I would be, or I would have been considered a critical thinker, a conspiracy theorist for entertainment's sakes. I would obviously, being born in a city, being raised in a city, one of the local liberal cities of the nations, go along with it, assumed at a very young age, understood that I had a certain sense of discernment, certain sense of understanding that people around me did not usually have. But I also understood that there was no reason to try to convince other people of the truths that I knew, of the truths I understood. Now, not sure if this was some sort of matrix or controlled narrative that was programmed into these so-called truth seekers to have a false idea that as they were growing, as their truths were being evident to them, that they should not share it with those around them, which would have made things understandable, which should have made things run smoothly, or it was the intuitive knowing within the creature telling them that not everyone is capable of truth, understanding, and being able to comprehend what it is you're saying, and you yourself are not ready to face the backlash or the Mr. Smith reaction to what some truths that might be spewed outside might bring about the reactions of those around you that you say it to. So it kept quiet, as I'm sure most individuals do. Now, the major shift took place, I believe, majority of people too, but seeking, always knowing there's a bigger reason. Even when there was a thing called high school, people would ask, teachers would ask, what is it, your 5 year goal? What is your future? What do you intend to do in your career? This question, this point of view thinking never actually snapped on and never comprehended, because I believe most people who were aware of the real world, aware of the situations taking place, almost had an intuitive knowing that the world as we know it might be changing very drastically. And in order to think along those lines is to enslave one's entire imaginative process, entire ego or avatar that they invent about themselves to a very particular small state. I never personally went down that road of imagining myself in a career, imagining myself in such a long term goal life. This might be just a personal thing, but I believe most individuals who are free-minded, critical thinking, they always assumed something major was coming, so they never tied down to it. And I believe this might have a major reasoning for that because as we understand life, as we build a narrative about ourselves, the attachments, the families, the cultures that we are born into as human beings, most people, they're so enslaved by the idea of who they are, they assume that they are the beings that they were born and they were told that they were. When they were a child, they did not know these things. They did not self-identify with these narratives, these associations, these attachments that they call themselves at this current day and age as all adults grow up, mature, their minds become less malleable, they lose their childlike sense. And I believe that is the secret to living a long, luxurious, and fruitful life, to always have that childlike essence about you. Because once that disappears, once you go into that state of, I am a certain age now, so I must become this thing called mature, I must act appropriate, I have to fit along with these coordinated plans that society has for me, it seems at a certain point that this is the right thing to do. This is what everyone is doing. This must be the natural procession of the human society, the human mind, the human being. But that is a false trap that seems to be invented in order to get the imaginative powers of that particular human being trapped into only thinking about what they have already preconceived from the past into what they think they should be doing. So in that sense, I have always been a sort of, if you can explain it, detached level. There was no real connection to the things that they would tell you are true, or the stories, the history. That's what critical thinking and so-called conspiracy theory minded set is, to always ponder, not because you think something is wrong, but because you yearn and seek for truth and you seek for an understanding of things that are clearly out there, and the world seems to be guiding you towards those things, especially with the internet, which is way more connected, way more controlled than the average person is able to comprehend, even those that are awakening. Very long time ago, I think it became very controlled, but at this current stage, they make it have the assumption, the false idea that it isn't as controlled as they want you to, or you would think that it is. So as you go through that natural rise, you go through certain steps which makes you question your belief system, which makes you question what you think you believe, which dictates how you see the future, how you see your present self. And these are the current stages of washing away the ego, washing away the thing that you hold dear to you as yourself, and you more get connected to the I am presence of who you truly are, the awareness, the operation that lives, rather than the being that the I am essence has associated itself with. We assume that that power of the awareness, the I am, probably isn't so weak that it would attach itself to an ego. It would attach itself to a narrative which then lives out its life. And that ego, that persona that we invented, is induced with fear, is induced with doubt, is induced with ideas and narratives, and it starts believing it. And anything outside of those narratives then become too shaky, too fearful for us to go down. So we're incapable of handling that level of thought. We think the awareness, the I am, will overcompass and overpower such weak operating systems. However, that is why trauma-based inductions and the system at large is invented, created, and staged, so that we are unable to see past such things. Like I said, most individuals on their own natural sense, when they go through this transformation, they go through this awareness, they go through this awakening, it's like you're walking on a cloud. You feel like you're untouchable. You feel like you're doing things in coordination, but this is how faith, this is what the guidance and knowing that you're in a high vibration gets you. And this is how most human beings are capable of being on most usual days. If they're healthy, they're detoxed, and they're not bogged down by all the negative energies that are all around them. That is why you'll find most people going through that initial stage or the ending stage of awakening. The same way you would detox your body, it would be a good way to detox the energies of other human beings around you. The average person probably doesn't think about energies, other people's thoughts, and what we think about other people's thoughts, but they do weigh us down, they do corrupt us. And we think that we have some sort of control over them, but it comes on and it invades your own personal thinking, it invades your own personal essence, and it becomes more a part of you than you realize, and you stop being your true essence, your true I am. And then the ideas, the thoughts, the energies, the negative forces of the other energy seep into your personal space, they seep into your vibration frequencies, your chakras, and then they become way more overpowered than your true essence is. And that is why most human beings, they're afraid to, because of the system they live in, the dependency or the codependency that has been trained into the population. But it's always good to detox from human beings the same way we detox from our food. Now back to my own personal view on things. As I said, as a young child, I was always aware there was greater things at large. I was always aware that the others around me weren't as intuitive, weren't as adept. I can read adults, understand why they were doing what they were doing, what the reason they were reacting that way is. But at the same time, as a child, you notice how powerful and strong the authority, the narcissism, or the feelings of these adults are, that they would never actually listen to the deciphering of a child telling them this is so and this is so. Now, I also do believe in the current day and age that we're living into, these certain beings who are born, they are purposely put into a situation, into a society where their spark, their light is forcibly diminished, or they're born into certain families, certain narcissistic tendencies that it prevents that child from shining and it prevents that child from being full completeness. Because if you were to nurture it, if you were to support it, if you were to give it the actual advice and the actual nurturing of an intuitive child that has this ability, then the system is probably too afraid that it might raise up an opposition to what it truly is. And that is why you'll hear a lot of stories about intuitive children, light workers, children of God, always born to a certain group of people, or always surrounded to a certain group of people that are complete opposites. Some would say this is a test that life has given that child to overcome, that they become their best self by striving through things. I personally, through my ponderings, through my understandings, would assume that the best way to have gone forward would actually to nurture these children, not for a particular end goal, but yes, for the very fact to nurture these children, to bring about their best self, to bring about a non-corrupted, non-traumatized essence, because the capabilities of these children who have this true gift within themselves is very, very unprecedented. Now, that is why I have always in my mind, and soon I will start manifesting it verbally before every video for those returning ones, that I will be starting a foundation, a sort of school, if you will. I believe many have already ventured down this road. They have their own particular way they think people should be raised or how children should be raised. But there's also, or always, a different angle to come about things, different groups of lineage of society. We are born with the same consciousness because, as many aware folks in the past have said, once a certain individual human has awakened something within themselves or discovered something, it permeates throughout all of human consciousness, and it makes the next human being be very easier to learn this. They have studied this in animals from one continent to another. They've induced a fear tactic into one, and it has been brought into another in a totally different continent. They've raised certain rats and they've given education that the children in another continent learned it much quicker, even though they had nothing to do with it. It's not just about genetic engineering and genetic intelligence, there's also a conscious awareness. That is why when each individual awakens to some new knowledge, awakens to a due perception or awareness, no matter what, at the end of the day, it has helped future of humanity on some level. Now, these videos I'm going to be doing, which gives out my personal story, it's obviously going to be all over the place because whenever ideas come into my head, I just speak it out. And it's also very difficult for me to pretend like I'm talking to someone as I record. That is why most of the things you listen to on videos, on recordings, I assume is a false narrative, is a false character that people need to put on in order for them to be able to speak such things. Because I know in my personal case, whenever I'm speaking to myself, assuming that I'm being recorded or I'm speaking to someone, there is an essence of some sort of character. You can call it the ego, or you can call it the made up actor that I'm currently studying or observing so that could help others who are going through that same stage or help decipher what it is that's actually taking place in one that's going through this experience, which is what I would say my, if you want to give it a name, career, my skill, my hobby, my ability is as an adult, whatever that term would be defined as in this current consciousness, that I am able to understand or observe myself going through a certain scenario, understanding certain societal structures, and then by understanding this, you write about it, you share it, so it makes it much easier for others to understand exactly why they're feeling this way, why they're going through the things they're going through, and assist them in able to break through that mold, break through that glass ceiling, and better understand. And therefore, we can all have a collective, sane, rational population of humanity who does not bring about the end of it all. So as I said, these videos will be randomly here and there. If you want to leave some comments, if you want to leave a direction, or if you want to leave some random notes on how certain things might have been talked about or how you would like to hear it as if it would assist you, I am all open to suggestions. Other than that, I will just be recording exactly how my personal linear timeline of how things came to be so that it might assist other people onto this as far as it goes, and see if I cannot find my fellow tribesmen, my fellow travelers, my fellow group of humanity, of consciousness or similar consciousness in this existence of time. Because what I've understood and what I sense is most people, truth seekers, conscious, awake children of God, are always so separated amongst each other, and that is why they need companionship. They need to have communion with other like-minded folks, because it encourages the energy. It keeps you amongst high-spirited, high-energy folks, because the majority of time, or if those that choose to be, they're usually around the low-energy ones that are either draining the high-energy folks unknowingly or knowingly, and it affects them very, very greatly without them even knowing, because most end up being, in my case as well, kind-hearted, overzealous, a little naive, a little ignorant to the corruption and evil and the way that evil might perceive one. So they get a little cognitive dissonance, if you will, and assume that the world is as peaceful and as loving and as caring as the truth seekers, the children of God, because they weren't warned ahead of time, or they weren't told exactly how the world works. And in that sense, they put themselves out there a little too much. They put themselves in situations they might not be fully aware of, especially since the outside world has a lot of Mr. Smith contagions within them, and probably do not even understand sometimes exactly what it is that they're experiencing. And this video, this personal exposures that I'll be recording, hopefully assist those in the future times that listen to this and go through that experience, so they're pre-warned and they understand that even though you are as loving, as kind-hearted as can be, this world does not operate in those fairy tales and rainbows. Not yet anyway. It's going to take some time. It will eventually get there, so that every good-hearted, good-spirited positivity is nurtured, cared for, and understood. But until that time, there will be some harshness, there will be some resistance to those that are awakened and speak in truth. And as long as we know that there are others out there that care for them, that think about them, that understand the role, that understand the journey that they're going through, it does make things all a little better.